Venice. It's the capital of romance. Nestled in a lagoon at the far end of the Adriatic Sea, it is a city of rich history, of power and glory.
Travelers that arrived in Venice at that time, they could not believe their eyes. Everything was so shining.
It was once the most densely populated city in the world, and it was genuine Italian. Nowadays, the genuine Italians of Venice are harder to come by. The city seems to be populated solely by tourists.
It's a little bit too crowded, but if you know a little bit the small alleyway to try to escape, it's very good to live here.
Although this city of living history seems eternal, its future is uncertain. It sits on fragile foundations, in constant erosion.
There is movement of boats, and so the wall go down.
And if that isn't enough, floods, big floods, are also a common occurrence.
This is an amphibious situation fixed and maintained by human intervention.
So what if the tide sometimes takes control of the city? It's a small price to pay in exchange for the beauty of life on. Venice was built on 118 small islands. Each, at one time, was its own independent parish.
When did they start building bridges?
From the origin, you had bridges, but a bridge was rather something, it was a boat or let's say a couple of planks, something that you could move around because you needed to pass on your boat. You can talk with an old Venetian that never left his island. He actually lived very much on his own island. And with the change of use of Venice, using less your boat, more and more walking, more and more craftsmen, they tended to build bridges. And so from the 16th century, bridges are going to multiply.
With 435 bridges, there's a bit of everything here. Straight bridges, crooked bridges, wood, stone, and steel bridges. Some bridges even provide access to a single building.
Is it very typical to find a lot of bridges that are diagonally crossing from one sestiere to the other?
That's a name that you'll find very often written above a bridge. Ponte storto, the crooked bridge. The crooked bridge is simply because as they are built lately, in fact, they connect where there's a hole, two places to be connected. And so they adapt to what's there. Even the Rialto Bridge is crooked if you look at it, and that's why it's amazing. It's 28 meters of a crooked stone arch.
But bridges aren't the only twisted things in Venice. The entire city is a labyrinth of streets branching out in all directions.
Tell me, what is a sestiere?
Sestiere is one of the 6 districts of Venice, what in the Roman times was called quartiere in 4. In Venice, it's sestiere.
So did each sestiere have its own personality?
Each sestiere has its personality, and it's very interesting because when you're walking around Venice, you can walk for ages and ages, you'll never go through it. Said there are 3,000 roads. But you find that things are, at the same time, very similar, and yet the structure is giving you information of how it was used. For example, the fact that Canareccio has embankments. Embankments with the houses, with their entrance on the embankments and on the waters in a change of use, just like bridges. The Rialto, for example, you turn around it. It's not a district, it's the area around the bridge. The Bridge of Rialto, which is the only one until the 19th century. It was the first one in the 13th century, made differently. But it really is the historical, legendary, economical heart of the city, where nowadays you find the origins, the legend of Venice, but at the same time you find Venetian meeting, mixing with the tourists. This is where the Venetian come, where they go, from the mainland to where they come from.
Finding your way around Venice is no simple task. And if you're looking for a specific place, chances are even a pocket GPS won't help you. Most addresses here lack a critical element: the name of the street. And the door numbers? They've been assigned in order of construction. Trust me, you'll need a real Venetian to get proper directions.
It isn't hard to get lost in Venice.
Well, that's what you think, but actually try getting lost, and you'll see that it's very difficult to get lost, because it's all closed. You only lose time, which is a bit different.
This is the Jewish ghetto.
This is the door of the ghetto. There's a whole history of the ghetto. The Jews were allowed to settle in Venice in 1516. The fact is that they were settled in an area which was very industrial. In fact, ghetto might come from Venice. It would be the German community pronouncing getto. Ghetto, that is, the casting of bronze. Gettare is to cast bronze. Each community in Venice tended to be grouped naturally and also controlled by the state. And the structure of the ghetto is quite particular because we tend to have higher houses. As the Jews were confined to this island, they grew very small floors, very numerous going up. There's not one maze in Venice. There are all the different mazes that you can go looking for. Each one has his maze. One is going to look at the architecture, one is going to look at history, one to maybe symbols or small things or bar tours or whatever you want to do in Venice. It has always been commented all through its history, from the moment of the Crusades to the moment of the 15th century. Ambassadors saying there was no more triumphant city than Venice. I'm just going to tell you that Nietzsche commented that the only word he could think of to replace the word music was Venice.
Venice's small size makes it easy to forget that it was once a superpower. Need a reminder? Just look at these majestic palaces lining the Grand Canal, all built at the height of the Venetian Empire.
The description of a traveler that arrived in Venice at that time was marvelous. They could not believe it their eyes, because the palace on the Grand Canal, they were so rich, so decorated. They were painted from the external walls by the best painter in Europe, and gold, and everything was so shining, because they have enough money to pay for everything.
How did a city that sprung from a lagoon become the strongest empire in Europe?
Because they have a specific capability to dominate the sea and use the sea as a trade route. That was unique because they live over the water. So they have this technique that were quite unique. And also because they had this political and social environment. Means that the population and the political class, they were very united. And it was a city very welcome to everyone. No problem for any kind of race, ethnic group, religion. Just because to be an open city was more easy to trade, to travel. Venice itself wants to control from the trading point of view. They didn't want to take over other countries.
Venice's influence and control extended throughout the Mediterranean and far beyond. From the 9th to the 12th century, the city was the hub of trade between Western Europe and the rest of the world. At its peak, Venice could count on a fleet of 3,000 boats, manned by over 36,000 sailors.
The trading commercial power arrived until the end of the Black Sea, and it's from there that Marco Polo one day decided to go on, to go forward, and leave the boat there and start to walk, to see what was there.
Through its industrious and adventurous leaders such as Marco Polo, by the 13th century, Venice had become the most prosperous city in Europe. The Venetians actually developed tools of commerce that are now the backbone of our global economics.
To become a capitalistic state like it was, they needed money, but not only money, also all the system of payment.
Promissory notes, credit.
Yeah, all this stuff. The bank system, the insurance system, they invented these ways to help the commerce. And in Rialto, of course, they were the market, but also the office to use these notes, credit notes, sort of checks, you know. And they were the custom place. They had to stop there to pay bills to the city. There were no bridge on the Grand Canal, so the boat with a big tree to sail, they could pass through the Grand Canal, arrive Rialto, deliver the goods in the stock place that were all around Rialto. It was amazing to see this big ship beside a palace, you know?
So the port of Venice at the time was deep enough for the merchant ships?
Yes, they also digged where they needed the big boat to pass.
These large boats took on an increasingly important role. In the 14th century, the arsenal, Venice's bustling shipyard, became the largest factory in the world.
"16,000 workers works only on building boats. Arsenale is the first industry, you could say, in Europe. In fact, it's the place where they bring people to impress people. Everyone came to Venice, they took to Duke Palace and then Arsenale, because at that time they could see thousands of workers all together, very well organized, building boats. And they could build 2 or 3 boats per day. Even Dante, you know, the most important Italian writer, dedicated a chapter to the Arsenale, writing that it was like a hell, fire, everything, you know. So that was the real power of Venice, because the boat was everything for Venice.
You have to wonder, before Venice became a maritime superpower, what exactly inspired its founders to build a city in a swamp?
Hi, Claudio.
Hi, nice to meet you. How do you say nice to meet you in Italian?
Piacere di averti conosciuto.
Piacere di averti conosciuto.
Esatto.
Were you born in Venice?
Yes, I'm born in Venice. I live here, I work here, and I want to stay here. Now we go immediately to see the starting point of the town, when Venice was only sand and water. Giorgio! L'hai vista? Grazie! Buon proseguimento! Now we are at the start of the town. First people who founded Venice find this kind of situation. It's not easy to found a town in this situation. This is like a sponge. So you have water also inside where you think that there is only land. Now you can see what kind of material you have under the buildings here in Venice. This is sand and water.
Why did they decide to build a city on sand and water?
If there is the war, you escape, you make a solution for your life.
Relocating into the heart of a lagoon allowed the people to escape the Germanic invasions. The lagoon provided protection from land attacks, and the shallow waters prevented enemy ships from getting too close.
The first thing to do is plant woods around an area and make an island. After, you try to put stones, bricks, everything to make important basement, and after you can build an house.
Venice is supported by an immense artificial forest. The Santa Maria della Salute church alone rests on over 1.1 million wooden stilts. Just imagine how many there must be in the whole city.
We are at the National Museum of Natural History. You can see immediately is green where you walk. And so is emblematic because you see that the water is upper of the first level of this building. Venice born and live with the tide. The tide for 6 hours grow up and for 6 hours go down. This movement of the water is the heart of the town because new water come inside in the lagoon and the bad water go outside in the sea. Problem for an architect or for an engineer is not to build the building, but to keep a basement strong to build this building. Now, if you see this is a very big and low bridge, and so have great force on the side under the sea level. We don't have stones or a solid rock. We have sand, we have water. This is the great problem to build here in Venice. This wood is a tree used to arrive with the boat. If you see, the problem is where there is water and air. If you have only water, no problem. The wood exists for millennium. And when you have water and air, you have a problem. And Venice have a problem 2 times a day, every day. An accelerate of the problem are the waves, and the waves made by the motorboat.
The bottom of the gondolas and the small boats are designed to skim the surface of the water without creating too much disturbance. For the larger boats, however, it's a different story.
You surf or don't surf? Okay, this. This is not surf. Make only the first wave in front, and after, not a great wave. But under the water, these move very much water. Differently of this. These make superficial waves. They make a different kind of problem because this kind of boat have in the first part arrive the wave and hit the fundamenta. The other, like a vacuum cleaner, keep the water from the foundation. And so this is a problem because the foundation go in the canal. There is movement of boats, there is a movement of tide, and so the wall built over the foundation go down. This is not public property, it's private property, and so the owner of the building paid. The problem is that it is an important job and very expensive.
The cost of these renovations can be astronomical. Many Venetians who inherit buildings often have to sell them due to lack of resources to perform even the most basic maintenance.
Usually is a work that is necessary every 100 of years. People prefer to make the parquet over the new kitchen. They hope the next generation make the job.
The burden of maintaining the city is passed on from generation to generation. But Venetians have always developed novel methods to fix up their homes. In fact, we can still see the grooves in which barriers were once installed to seal off and empty the canals for maintenance.
Now they are only history. We have more modern technique with iron gates and modern pump to make the same quickly and economically more interesting. This is a typical example of maintenance. You see, this is an old house. There is a problem just in the corner on the level of the sea. They closed with the metallic barrier the foundation, all around. With the pump at the end, they put over the water, and after they make the maintenance of the foundation.
The wear and tear on these foundations is accelerated by the tourism industry, which increases traffic on the water. The problem is that Venice probably couldn't exist without tourists.
What makes up Venice?
Venice itself is a pure island connected by a long bridge, 6 kilometers long, to the mainland, with a completely historical complex of buildings. In Venice, new houses, case nuove, means built in the 19th century. It's an historical town, completely isolated by water from the rest of the regional territory. But the municipality of Venice is much larger, with 5 times the inhabitants of the island, and the metropolitan structure, the real built city, is even the double of the municipality as population.
Is tourism the #1 industry of Venice?
No doubts about. Tourism is the first, and public administration is the second, and university is the third.
Tourism may be the engine that drives the city, but it's also a major factor in the deterioration of the lagoon. A fragile ecosystem of 550 square kilometers, of which only 8% is land.
What is the impact of tourism on the lagoon?
Well, we have 20 millions of visitors in Venice per year in last year. And so we have a lot of inhabitants for a few days, but they are normal and quiet inhabitants. So it's a sort of additional population, and they pollute like the inhabitants themselves. We have an additional impact from the cruise ships because they have heavy motors, they have growing dimension, and so they give problems to the canal shapes, inducing some waves with their movements on the shore of the town. But the real impact is due to the emission in the atmosphere. It's huge motors with some pollution. I think the principal component of the air pollution in Venice in these years
Are the cruise ships?
Yes.
Venice has a water management authority.
Oh, yes, very relevant for the survival of the town. We must say that the lagoon is not a natural product. If the nature could be the master of the situation, the lagoon should be or continent or open sea, a bay. This is an amphibious situation fixed and maintained by human intervention. So we have an authority which has the task of maintaining the lagoon in good efficiency. Venice built around itself a good situation for being a town and a port.
What happened in 1966?
A tremendous exception to the normal condition of weather. So we had 1 meter 92 centimeters of water over the median level of the sea. It means that the low level of the houses was invaded by water, and the damages were enormous.
What is l'acqua alta?
It's an exceptional level of the high tide. When the southeast wind blows too far, the Adriatic Sea has a higher level in its ending point, the northern Adriatic, and so the town is invaded by flood. Some centimeters, 10, 20, 25 centimeters, so you can't walk freely, and the town is paralyzed.
How long does it last?
1 or 2 hours. Sometimes it's very frequent and very heavy to suffer.
The Acqua Alta is a reality of life in Venice. The water takes over the city as many as 6 times each year. The Tide Monitoring and Forecast Center emits various sound alerts according to the extent of the anticipated flooding. And SMS alerts even help give citizens time to set up flood barriers to protect their property.
A lot of intervention was made in the houses, but the real change is to protect the lagoon from the open sea. We have to close, when necessary, the access of water from the sea into the lagoon. And works are now at a good stage, so we hope that into 3 or 4 years we will be protected. The preservation of the town depends from these works.
At a cost of 4.7 billion euros, the giant gates of the Mose project are perhaps just as crazy as building a city on a swamp. Its goal is to seal the 3 openings of the lagoon in about 30 minutes to protect Venice from the rising water.
Will Venice sink sooner or later?
Oh yes, in a famous movie, the main characters say Babylon was destroyed and Venice will too. But not so soon, not at all. But the climate change will not induce a sea level rise. This is the real danger for Venice now.
While setting out into the lagoon is a simple prospect, traveling within the city is something else entirely.
I born and grew up here in Venice. I spent some time around Italy and for work, but I spent mostly of my life here in Venice.
If most Venetians refuse to live elsewhere, it's primarily because of the exceptional quality of life the city has to offer. The most surprising element is by far the total absence of cars.
It's quite amazing to be in a city that has no cars. The quietness and the calmness is magnificent.
It's different. The life is really different because it's a safety city. Because without car, it's so safe, it's so quiet.
As Venice is connected to the mainland by a single bridge, trains and buses bring tourists and workers as close to the city as they can. Beyond this point, travel is dictated by the local realities.
So is boat the only way to get around Venice?
Yes, or walk. For me, the better thing is walk around the city. And also you can take the city boat. It's named Vaporetto. It's a very, very good service. Every 10 minutes you have one Vaporetto, and also in the night, every 20, 25 minutes. inside the canals of the city, if you are not able to drive, is difficult. Outside is simple. Open sea, not difficult to drive, but here with the gondola, with the other rowing boat, it's difficult to drive a boat.
You know, the gondola driver seems so skilled. You're going on the gondola and it looks as if they were going to crash into the wall, but they don't. Are there a lot of accidents here?
No, absolutely not. There's no more accident now than 10 or 50 or 20 years ago because there's more and more barge and boat, plastic boat, other type, every year. But no accident, it's not dangerous.
There are no cars and no real streets, so what happens when we have a fire, when you need an ambulance, the police?
You have firemen, ambulance and police both. Then you can see the ambulance on the Grand Canal and also police, carabinieri or firemen.
They can exceed the speed limit.
Yes, because the speed limits are around between 5 and 11 kilometers per hour. Here in the Grand Canal is 7 kilometers, but the police, ambulance and firemen can go fast.
Speed limits are primarily there for safety reasons. But speeding boats create waves, and waves cause erosion. So the limits also increase the city's sustainability.
We live on the water, and then all the things happen in the water with boat.
Do many people have private boats here?
Yes.
Can you park your boat on the Grand Canal?
You can park the boat only if you have your place. I have one there, and I can park the boat there.
So why is your boat parked so far?
Because last week and this week I have too much thing to do, too much work, and then I decided to park my boat in a safety place where it's possible to leave the boat there for 2 or 3 weeks. Normally, during the weekend I use the boat every day, and I park near my home.
Moving around in Venice has its challenges. Take it from parents with strollers or delivery men with carts.
What is so unique about Venice?
I think the quality of life in Venice is very, very good. The food is good, the weather is good. If you want, you can go to the beach in front of the Adriatic Sea. In the wintertime, in 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, you can go to ski. It's a little bit too crowded because every day there's thousands and thousands of tourists. But if you know a little bit the small alleyway to try to escape, it's very good to live here.
Is Venice a small town?
It's like a village. At the moment, it's 60,000 people, real resident in Venice. Then it's less than a small village.
Actually, Venice is just about twice the size of Central Park. But the locals have their little secrets to ensure a life away from all the hype.
So you're going to show me a little corner of Venice where we can escape from tourists?
Yes. But now it's obligatory for us till the end of the alleyway, then Campo San Polo. After that, we turn left, we escape in a small alleyway, and we arrive at the market.
Excellent. Thank you for taking me through the secret passageway.
Now the secret passages are finished. On the right side there is Rialto Bridge, on the left the market, and it's full of people everywhere. There's no way to escape. Now, here we are, fish market. It's full of people, Venetian, tourists. Come on.
Fred Fishmonger?
Buongiorno, it's a period of cuttlefish. Grazie mille. Ciao. Ti mi daresti un masso? Grazie.
Nicola,
Dimmi.
do you know every single person in this market? Be honest.
More or less. More or less.
Great.
More or less.
So,
We are used to be here to drink something at the end of the working day. It's usual for us.
but it's Saturday.
Also, and Saturday at lunchtime, before to go somewhere in the boat or to go to eat something, all together.
The name Giro d'Ombra, which translates to something like the rotating shade, comes from what these people are doing now. They meet here for a glass of wine and rotate with the sun to remain in the shadow of the buildings.
Are you allowed to walk around the city with alcohol?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, of course.
I love this place. I really love this place, and I'm used to come here to drink something with the friends.
So where are we going now?
After the Rialto Bridge, I give all the things to my mom, and look at the Rialto Bridge. Ciao Piero, full of people, crowded, like every day, and there's no way to avoid it, because or you have to take the gondola, but there's only 3 bridges, 4 now in the Grand Canal.
She's holding my hand. Okay, we're gonna get through this.
And now we go inside a small hallway. Another way to escape. Buongiorno, buongiorno. Oof, safe.
We did it.
Seeing Nicola bring food to his mother highlights the importance of family in Italian culture. Laura Scarpa is a native Venetian deeply connected to her city. She's created a website that connects young families wishing to live in Venice to the resources they need.
What part of town are we in?
Now we are in the island of Giudecca.
Like many abandoned industrial districts, La Giudecca is experiencing a renaissance. Cheaper than the center, the neighborhood now attracts small businesses and new residents.
È andata bene oggi?
A sure sign that neighborhood life is flourishing, families and daycares are now part of the scenery.
Can you find everything in Venice that you would find in a more ordinary city?
Yes, and maybe more, because it's full of tourists, so the needing of the tourists are really useful sometimes, but the tourism changed the habits, and we have lost a lot of little things, like the little shop where to buy the sewing kits and the very good patisserie.
They've been replaced by tourist shops with souvenirs.
Yeah. Another thing that I don't like is there are few places where you can sit down and stay to work, to read, to stay for hours, because for the tourists, people of the bars need that you go away after half an hour. Let's go to the Vaporetto.
The reality of Venice's touristic character can be overbearing. But according to the real locals, the benefits of life in this paradise on the water far outweigh the disadvantages.
It's the trip I do every day. I take 2 boats, but I take the boats just because I have the baby. If I'm alone, I go barefoot. I prefer go walk.
Are there a lot of places that kids can play in Venice?
Yeah. The town is the best place where to grow baby because it's not dangerous. There are no cars, and you can leave the babies outside without a lot of control. Alla cocelata.
Hold on just for 1 second. This is so cool.
Va bene. This is the square. This is the square, the place where we are going. Very beautiful square with trees and no water. And the baby can play safely, and the mother and father can stay looking to the baby and drinking something.
Oh, how convenient.
Yeah. You see, old people, moms, babies, everybody stay together.
To understand Venice, one must live as a Venetian. When the day draws to a close and the visitors retire, the locals reclaim their city for a short while. And it all starts, of course, with a drink.
Time to spritz.
You know, after 4 or 5 days of walking around in this city, you wonder how you can live a normal life here with all the tourists. But now that I see places like this, you can understand the quality of life that Venetians must enjoy.
This is one of the things I could not live without, because Venetian people have this relaxed way to live after job, after work. Because Venetian houses are really small. The streets are your living room. We are used to meet people outside. The life is outside. We really stay outside every time. The life is better. Numbers say that a lot of family living in Venice are moving outside, mostly for the prices of the houses. This is the most important problem that we have, the prices of the houses, because the life is the same cost of the other. Anyway, all the people I know that moved to Mestre or outside say that they miss Venice. But there is somebody that prefer to move in Mestre to use their car. And this is one of the things that everybody outside think that we miss, to use the car. But really, I don't need the car.
After living the Venetian life for a week, I really think we spend too much of our lives in cars. The rhythm of things here is just right. And I'd quickly learn to see past the tourists and their cameras. The secret seems to lie in knowing how to find the secret places, hidden within the maze. The Venice of today is as unique as the Venice of old, and the dedication of its citizens promises to keep it vital and romantic